Thanks for the intro, Eric. Yeah. So yeah, I called this title Conferencemaxxing, which is a little bit of an irreverent name, but really the point of this is it's going to be about not just how to network at conferences, but also the other things that you can do to self-promote as a researcher, because I do think it's really a holistic thing that all fits together. So how do you network successfully? At first, like to think about this, I asked a few of my other friends who are strong networkers, and the answers that I got were a little bit tough because really it's just like a personality thing. Like for some people, this really comes naturally. The idea of this presentation, though, is that we're not going to talk about just how to network for jobs, but we're going to talk about like building your own profile, finding friends, which is really the most important integral part. And specifically the things about conferences in the scientific community where like finding friends is like a little different than how you do it normally. Um, how to spend time at a conference effectively to maximize these sorts of things. And I'm going to talk about these things not in like a cynical way. Sometimes it's going to sound like I'm a little bit cynical, the way that I'm saying like, oh, your friends give you opportunities, but I'm not thinking about these in cynical terms. I'm just trying to explain why different things that I've done like have helped me out, I think. So first, we're going to talk about sort of the philosophy and mindset that you can approach this stuff with. Then we'll talk about building profile, what the sort of the anatomy of a good conversation is, and then like what you should do at a conference to make the most out of your time. So first, what is the mindset that you should have? Why am I giving a presentation where a lot of what I talk about is how to make friends? So first, like we'll talk about why it matters. And once again, like, I don't want to sound too cynical here, but you really get a lot out of networking. So I'll be putting a little bit of like folksy things that I heard from my parents. And one that my dad loves to say is, it's better to be lucky than good. What does this mean? Well, anyone can become good at a skill, but luck is rare. And often luck can make a really big difference. And where does luck come from? Luck comes from other people. Your friends will want to help you out, and they're going to want to give out opportunities when they hear about them. I can say firsthand that I've had some incredibly lucky things where it has come from having close friends who want to advocate for you and from, sort of being in the right place at the right time. So it's really like, it's not just something that's fulfilling and fun, but it is really important to like build up your connections in the community if you can. And also befriending your peers specifically is important. So another piece of folksy family wisdom is that when my sister and I would fight as kids, my mom would always say, your sister is going to be your friend forever. What does this mean? Well, as your life circumstances change and you get older, your friends are going to fall away. Like your best friend in middle school isn't going to your same high school. Your best friend at high school isn't going to your university. People are going to join different companies and fall away. But the ironic thing is that your research friends are kind of going to stick around for much longer in your life because your life circumstances are moving in parallel. Like we're all going to continue to publish at conferences. People are going to become faculty at different places. You might be at a company and then your friend is a faculty and you can go to them to find an intern, for example. So the connections that you make at conferences really can be like a lifelong or at least a career-long thing. So it really is important to make friends. But also befriending your peers is fun. I think this is kind of obvious. You're going to enjoy your conference more if you're meeting new people. And really, there's a lot of great people out there to befriend. So what philosophy do I, like after introspecting and talking to some of my other friends about this topic, like what do we think about conversations? So first, like what should your goal be when you're having a conversation with someone? So here are some bad answers. Like you should not go up and talk to someone just because you want them to introduce you to someone else. This is incredibly annoying. So like at conferences, I've had people come up, while I'm talking to someone else and like come in to introduce themselves and just immediately go like, oh, hi, Michael, I work on this, and I'm going to be applying for PhDs. Like, do you know, like how can I talk to William? Like, do you think is William taking you serious? And it's like, that's incredibly annoying because it feels like they're just trying to use you. And maybe in another context, like if they were already my friend, then I would be happy to advocate for them. But you can't, come in and expect these sorts of things. So you really have to be careful. to not come off as having some agenda. A good answer is just that you want to get to know someone, you want to have fun having good conversations, or if you want feedback on ideas. So similarly, like, how should you think about your social media presence? I don't think that there are really bad answers here. Like, it's a good answer to want more visibility for your work and to want more name recognition. But I think great answers to this are that you want visibility for your ideas and that you want to get to know people like extra online. And I think that philosophy has really taken me very far too. Another bit of mindset thing that I think more junior like students really have to break out of is like, what does it mean to like respect your elders? So if you're at a conference and you're talking like suppose you're at a conference and you see, I don't know, you see like Jeff Hinton, right? Like standing there. How are you, if you get a chance to talk to him, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to give him some special treatment? Maybe a little bit, but mostly I think the answer is no. This is not, there's no teacher-student dynamic going on in the research community. Everyone is peers. Even the most senior people are actually your peers. Like, we're all in this together working on science. I think the real way to respect a senior folk is not to like annoy them or worship them or treat them as an idol, just treat them as a person. So really you should try as much as you can to break out of this mindset, the mindset shift that you have to stop calling your advisor professor and to start, calling them their first name. Like approaching these people like peers is going to really help. And then the last like mindset thing that I think really you should think about and take into your approach to networking and chats and stuff is like, who are you as a scientist? Like, what is your value add? It's never too early to think about this. So like, what is your value add? There's a lot of different value adds you can have to the community. So research is obviously like the primary component that all of our value adds are. But there are other like big things that you can provide for other people. So like, what are holistic ways that you can contribute to the community? One piece of value can be advocacy, like advocating for things you believe in. An example that I had was being really involved in advocating to get rid of the ACL anonymity deadline thing. Also, connecting people is a value. You can be valued for how, you made connections between two friends that you had who work on a similar thing and you introduce them to each other. Like, that is helping the entire enterprise of science by, building better interchange and exchange of ideas. And I think that's a big part of the value that faculty provide. Also, good critique is value. So all of these things are things that you can deliver outside of the context of just your research. And these are all things that you can keep in mind when you approach your online presence. So that's kind of the next part that I'm going to talk about here is building your profile and your presence online. Because it does really make networking and making friends a lot easier. When Eric is talking about this, a lot of people coming up and knowing me at a conference, this is really a big part of why. So why does this matter? Your online profile is the first impression that people are going to have of you, or it can be. So I've gotten a lot out of having this high visibility. In the first year, William told me I was tweeting too much. I'm glad that I ignored this advice because people really don't remember why they know you or how they know you if they know you from online. They just recognize your name. And they won't remember really, unless it was really bad, if you posted something annoying. They'll just think, do I know you from somewhere? So I've actually had this experience where where some senior folks who will go unnamed just saw me standing at a table with my badge out and came up to me and was like, do I know you from somewhere? And I knew this was also a very vocal person on Twitter. And we had a nice conversation. They literally approached me because of Twitter. And I've done this to other people and made great friends. So this ties into another piece of advice, funny advice that I heard from my dad that I'll share with you. So my dad was in the Air Force, and there's a lot of funny things about military culture that come up. And one story that he had for me was this idea of the wedge. So what is the wedge? Basically, when you're inside of this big organization with a hierarchy, the worst thing you can do is have a goof up and break something or mess something up, land your airplane too hard and you break the landing gear or something. So, let's suppose I do that. I land a little too hard and break the landing gear. My commander's going to be like, this fucking Saxon is an idiot. He landed too fast and broke his airplane. What a moron. And it's really a bummer because I'm on the bottom of the hierarchy. But the thing is all you have to do is wait for someone else to come along and make a worse mess up and wedge under you. And when they do that, the entire stack gets lifted up. So, give it a few months and the next person does some different mess up. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be a pilot, so I can't really think of other examples. But suppose someone, I don't know, they break off an antenna or something, like use your imagination. Then they might be, well, this guy was the one who messed up. Give it a few more times and the stack moves up. And eventually the commander's not going to go, Saxon, that idiot, he landed too hard. He's going to go, Saxon, I don't know, what did he do again? But I've heard his name, must be a good guy. That's the punchline of that joke. So what's the takeaway for networking? Really, you should not be afraid to post, because unless you really say or do something bad, you're not going to be remembered for saying something dumb. People are just going to remember that they know you, because inevitably someone else is going to wedge under and say something dumber than whatever thing you're embarrassed about, and it's not going to matter in the end. So really the bias that most of us should have is to be present and to be authentic. And for almost all of you, this advice does not apply to me, but for almost everyone else, the advice really should be like, you should be posting more than you are. So I have come up with this, like, as I was introspecting about like, what sort of authenticity do I have and what sort of things do I post? I came up with this idea of like the posting compass. So everything that you put out online can be either high effort or low effort, and it can be serious or unserious. So serious things can go all the way from like research papers to just hot takes. And then there's kind of middle effort things on either side, like, middle seriousness things, like a blog post about your personal life instead of one about research, or just a joke, like low effort joke about research. Then there's less serious things like investing effort in making your website look nice. And then like super unserious things like a joke paper or like a shit post. So I'm going to give examples of kind of each thing that I've done just for illustrative purpose, and I'll talk about what I think the impact it's had on other people was. So obviously the high effort, high seriousness thing is to publish your papers. We all are aiming to build our profile through doing this. But what's a high effort, other high serious thing is like research blogs. So really, if you can create a quality research blog that's authentically you, that adds a lot of value. So when I made a post about column, I didn't just talk about, oh, the column was so good and there were all these papers. I thought about like, what are my topics that I'm trying to focus on right now? And I picked out some papers that I liked and just wrote about those. And I wrote about the personal insights that I got from the paper. I didn't just summarize them. And this really got a lot of traction. So here's the map of like visitors to my website. And the week that I posted that up, I got 1,000 page views to my website, and like 800 people looked at my website. So you can really get a lot of visibility by putting out these sorts of quality things, and it will help build your brand and your profile, and you'll establish yourself as someone who's an expert in your area. Then there's sort of low effort, high seriousness things, which are hot takes, which if you don't know, a hot take is just like sharing your opinion without thinking much and maybe putting your opinion in an incendiary way. So like, I post a lot of hot takes. I'm sure all of you are aware. So I post meta hot takes where I talk about the community and, complain. Recently, I was complaining about people putting too much math in their papers, or like talking just a hot take, like just some random thought that occurs to me about research, where I was thinking about hallucinations versus human mistakes. I just post that without really worrying like how correct is it, because I'm just starting a conversation. And then people will engage and I can argue with them and it's fun. Or, call outs. So I found that definition of AGI paper had like fake hallucinated citations that weren't real. So I made a post about it and, it got a lot of attention and I felt like it was a legitimate thing to put out. Now, you should be careful about starting fights. Like, I'm not encouraging all of you to start fights. I'm just giving as an example, like how I started a fight that I thought was authentic and I think it was good for me. Then there's like low effort, high serious posts, which I would argue is mainly like posting updates about your research. So saying, oh, here's my paper, come talk to me. We all know how to do that. So I'm not going to worry too much about describing it. Then there's like mid high effort, mid seriousness things, or like investing in the design of your website. So a year ago, this is what my website looked like when I put up this post. And then I kind of got addicted to playing around in Cursor and like editing the layout and style of my website. And now this is what it looks like. And I think I get a lot more dwell time on it now because people like to look at something that looks nice. And this doesn't just apply to your website. This applies to like when you make a poster. This applies to when you make a little promo thing for your paper. Like you should really think about making things look nice. This also applies like when you're posting a thread or when you're making a figure. Really, a lot of us should be thinking more about making stuff that looks nice than we currently are. Then there's mid-effort, low seriousness, but high cost things. At EMNLP, this was really a hit where I made these like joke stickers of an acceptable reviewer award and handed them out. And a lot of people were coming up and asking me for these. And I got this idea from this guy at iClear in Rwanda, where he submitted a paper about like a really efficient, he was doing like one of those speed run things where he had a really efficient code that could train a model to like high accuracy on, I want to say like Cypher 10 or something, or like probably not ImageNet, but he could train it really fast with high accuracy and it all fit in like 4 lines of code, but it got rejected. So in protest, he made a sticker that was the shape of the bottom of your badge, where he had the entire code for it printed out. And he was just giving it out. He was like, hey, you want this sticker? Put it on your badge. This is a piece of code that gets to like 90% accuracy in 5 minutes or whatever. And it was pretty funny. So giving out little handouts is like a higher effort thing, but all of these things together, if you just have fun with it, people appreciate these things. And these are the ways that I sort of built a profile. And once again, I didn't do these things with building a profile in mind, but just by having fun, it's really paid dividends. So then another like low effort, mid seriousness thing would be just posting, not really hot takes, but posting about ideas in your area. So boost other people's papers from people you don't know well, and maybe put out what your thoughts are on that paper. And by doing this, you're both helping, add value to the community by disseminating ideas, but you're also establishing yourself as an expert in your area. Because now people are going to think, I should come to Michael if I'm thinking about some of these topics like multilinguality or evaluation. And if you have this consistent brand of the sorts of opinions that you share, and they're authentic to you, you can really get far with people appreciating those things. So I found that I've gotten quite a bit out of that. Then another like low effort, like mid seriousness type of post that I put out is relevant life updates. So what do I mean by that? Something like posting about the conference with a picture. These are just things that once again, people think are fun. I don't know, people like them. I like seeing that people are having fun. I like seeing the picture of the NLP group at a conference. And, once again, it just sort of puts you like on people's minds. So I just like to have fun with it. I've done different little joke things, talking about, giving a life update that ties into your research. Like, oh, I'm going to be giving this presentation, and give it some flavor, say, oh, I'm on this, I'm on my flight right now, hurtling towards Amherst, blah, 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 just, be creative with the way that you talk about things. You can implicitly, share your travel photos, but also convey like what you're up to on that. So this was when I was on my way up to Seattle, and I posted, I'm coming up to Seattle for the summer for my internship. Anyone who wants to talk, let's hang out. And I posted, I documented that as I was coming up. So then low effort, low seriousness. This is shit posts and memes. So just posting little jokes, things that are timely, things that are relevant. These are always fun to do. So you should have a mix of all of these things. Like you can't just be a jokester. That's going to turn you into one of those like annoying effective accelerationism anons. Like people don't like those, but having a bit of this mixed in can be a fun thing for people that people like. And you can also combine these things together. So like you can make a shit post about your own paper, or like have a hot take that is relevant to what's going on, or, a meme that's also a life update where it's like, oh, I'm working on this overleaf paper. Here's a meme about how it feels seeing William's little circle pop up while I'm still editing it. So what are the sort of like overriding principles that I'm thinking about when I talk about this? Well, the first is like, you should really like have authentic opinions and don't be afraid to share them. When you put something out that's authentic to how you feel about things and what your perspective is, no matter how seriousness or unserious and high effort or low effort it is, it's going to reflect that. And so people are getting to know you through that, even if it's not, something super serious. And I think people appreciate a little bit of unseriousness because it makes you seem less threatening, less imposing. I don't know what the right word is. But people care about the people they know, and this is a route that people get to knowing you. So I'm really serious about this. Like almost any authentic visibility is good, as long as you're not an asshole. Even if you say something that's incorrect, even if you say something you change your mind on, it doesn't matter. Like you just really should probably be less afraid to speak up than you are. That being said, you do still need to add value. So, to loop back, like, what is the value of some of these things? The value of posting your perspectives on other people's work is curation. So people appreciate learning about work that they might be interested in that they wouldn't see otherwise. And if they get a habit of coming to you for perspectives on your area and your work is relevant, that's going to pay off when it comes time to share your own things. So you should try to be like a mini version of those like people who, post the hottest archive daily paper without reading them. You can be a good version of that. They always start off as the good version of that, where they're posting papers they're interested in with insights, and then eventually they get enough followers where it just turns into posting, posting the hype thing with just the abstract and no blurb. You can just be the start out version of that and never turn into the low effort version. So when there's a paper that you appreciate, come up with the authentic insight that you took away from it and post that along with the link. So critique is also a type of value. A fair criticism of ideas moves the conversation forward. If there's something you don't like and you think you have a valid reason to dislike it, just go ahead and post it. You're starting a conversation, and that is a legitimate bit of value that you can provide. And there is this thing about how social media rewards negativity. I think if you can give a little bit of productive negativity into the world from time to time, you'll be rewarded for it, and you'll also not be doing a bad thing. But of course, you have to be careful to not just become like Gary Marcus. Like you have to have some things that you are positive about, but it's still it's good to put out a little bit of negativity. Like you shouldn't be afraid to do that. Okay, so that's enough about your social media output. Now I'm going to talk about how to talk to people at conferences and how this sort of leads to making friends. So first, people might approach you. This is maybe after you've like successfully done the stuff in part 3. But as your work gets seen and appreciated, people are going to like it. Like I know at Column, there were a lot of people who wanted to talk to Deepak about his ML gym paper, and that sort of stuff really helps. And this is coming from your profile and visibility rising, but it's also coming from people appreciating your work. So you can sort of do the flip side of that, where you can talk to new people you want to meet about their work. So when you're talking to someone new, you should ask about their work. You shouldn't just immediately start like talking about your work, because people, it's not really this is something obvious, I think, to most people, but it's not a good conversational etiquette to force someone to talk about something you don't care about. And if they do ask, you need to be ready to say like something short and to the point about your work. So a good rule of thumb is like, can you think of a 1-sentence description just of the what? And then sort of a 30-second like summary, like your elevator pitch that you would give about like, this is what we did and this is what we learned. So also people like to be authentically complimented. So especially if you're talking to like a new junior person, which I submit you should mainly be doing, talking to like your peers who are at a similar career stage as you, you should compliment them. So you should talk to them about how, like, if you know them from the internet or you know them from their work, like it's good to say, I really liked this paper from you, blah, blah, blah. What are you working on now? That's a great conversation starter. And once they start talking about what they're working on now, you can loop in like the conversation about what you're doing too. You can say, oh yeah, I really thought of that. Like from, this ties into something from my paper where we learned blah, blah, blah. And you can have really great conversations like that with people. So one thing that you should kind of avoid is cliched topics. So it's valid to ask someone like as an icebreaker, how are you enjoying the conference? But it's a little bit boring. So can you think of like a conversation starter or a good question that's canned, but you can just save and like use on a lot of people that's relevant and interesting? So I really hate the meme of people talking about P doom, which is the like safety people's idea of like what's the probability that we're going to all be killed by AI. But this is like a legitimate canned conversation starter in that community that works really well. Where like if two people who are concerned about AI safety meet each other, they can just start a conversation with, oh, what's your P doom? And they'll immediately like get into and have like, they can have an interesting conversation about why. So like, can you think of a version of that that's like relevant to your interests or your work? And if you can bring it up, like it can be something recent. It can be like, do you think scaling is going to keep working? Do you think RLHF is good? You can ask questions like that, ask people for their opinions and see where it goes. So I had one that I was using at like ACL 2023, where I would ask people like, what's something you're sick of seeing? Like, what do you wish people didn't publish? That's authentic to me because I'm a little bit of a sour, negative, cynical guy. And you shouldn't do it if this isn't authentic to you. But whatever something that you could also talk about easily is a good place to start as like a canned icebreaker opening line. And especially when you're talking to senior folks, you should let them have a break from talking about research and talk to them about like random nonsense. So this ties into just how to talk to new people in general. So going back to this principle of like, what should your agenda be when you talk to someone? Your goal should just be to have a good conversation. You shouldn't be trying to get anything out of it. And friends come from having like an authentic connection to someone. So like, what are your mutual connections? It can be common friends, it can be common interests, which you're already at a huge advantage at a conference because everyone's interested in research, and you can use random things about them. So like a funny conversation that I had a couple of years ago at a conference was when I talked to Chris Manning for the first time, and I knew he was from Australia. So I asked him like, is Australian wildlife really that deadly, or do Australians just like to make everyone think it's dangerous? And then we had a great conversation where he was talking about when he was a kid, like, oh, this spider, like this huntsman spider is really big, but it's not actually dangerous. Like you can get people talking about something that's unrelated to research and just have a good exchange. And like, I don't think he remembers that or anything, but it's more the principle that you can have a really good conversation with someone about some nonsense that's unrelated. And a great place to start is something about like where they're from. You can ask, where are you from? If you know something about the place, it can be good. I've accumulated enough knowledge about India and China that I can ask people like, what state are you from? And maybe like be able to say something interesting. So that's a good thing to ask people about. Just all sort of things to keep around. Also, you can scaffold connections off of your friends. So it's really helpful to hang out in like a small group of people and then actively call in others. You don't want to stand around in a big circle that's just all UCSB people, let's say, or like all of your existing friends. But it's good to have like a small group of friends and like tag team a poster session or a social. If you walk around with one or two of your friends and you have enough of a disjoint set of people you can really get far with just introducing each other to the people you know. So introduce your small group of people to the people you know and vice versa, and it will really grow your network fast. So another one, sorry guys, is English. So really a heuristic you should have is that you should be speaking English almost the entire time you're in the conference. So like at a poster session, if you're talking to the people at the poster in a language other than English, that's going to scare people off from coming to join the conversation, and you're going to miss out on connections you could have. Now, I know this is hard because some presenters are going to be like less confident in English than you are, and they might want to talk to you in their language. Like this is okay if it's one-on-one, but something I would suggest doing is if someone else comes by and looks at the poster, you can basically offer the person at the poster just by saying to the person you're already talking to, maybe we should talk about this in English. The other person who walks by might really appreciate that, and then they would join the conversation, and it would leave a good impression of you on them. So that's just a little tip to have. And then what should you do after you have a conversation? One thing is you should be ready to like make a graceful exit. So like if you're talking to someone and like they don't seem very interested, some strategies like to end it is you can be like, oh, I don't want to take too much of your time, blah, blah, blah. That gives them a way to politely leave. Or, if you need to leave, you can just apologize and say like, oh, I need to go here. But, be ready to gracefully exit. And another thing that I used to always do this, I don't do it as much now, is when I end a conversation, treat Twitter as a Rolodex. So if you don't know what a Rolodex is, that's this old thing that people would use to store business cards, where everyone you met, you would put their business card in your Rolodex and like sort it by name so you could scroll through and find like the person's phone number who you made a connection with. I treat Twitter as a Rolodex. So when I end a conversation with someone new who I met, I literally would pull out my phone and say, hey, do you have a Twitter? And they would give me their handle and I would go follow them right away. And then you've built that connection. So if you want to talk to this person again, it's an easy way to find them. And also like you mutually follow each other. And you can do the same thing with LinkedIn or Blue Sky or whatever. But I think whatever Twitter is the place to do it right now because it's the dominant posting platform. Okay. So finally, I'm going to talk about sort of concrete strategies that you should do while you're at the conference. So first, before you arrive, you should identify targets for conversations. Like, who do you want to talk to? Have you seen any papers that look cool? If you have, what are the first authors and people at your career stage who are going to be at NeurIPS who you would like to chat with? If you send an email to like a current PhD student or a postdoc, they're pretty likely to actually respond. Like, especially if you say, hey, I liked this paper that you wrote, and are you going to NeurIPS? I'd love to talk. People respond really positively to that. And that can be a great way to make a connection with someone, especially someone who's already in like your area. And also identify the papers that are going to be in the poster sessions that you want to see. This is probably pretty obvious, but just something to say. If you've seen papers that look cool, or if your friends tell you about papers that look cool, you should definitely go see that poster because talking to the person at the poster is a concrete way to start a conversation. So you should prepare your elevator pitch. So here's like examples of elevator pitches that I had when I was doing my like multilingual and multimodal work. So my one sentence poster, like elevator pitch was just, I work on multilingual, multimodal evaluation. And people already know what that is, and they can like ask questions about it if they're interested. And then the 30-second version of that, like the elevator pitch was basically, I would say, okay, I looked at how text image models work in different languages. We made an automatic benchmark generator that could collect parallel translations of terms in several languages, including like English, Chinese, Spanish, generate the pictures, and then have metrics to find failures and collisions. And the interesting thing we found was that there were actually biases that were differentially expressed between languages, where like the model was more sexist in Spanish or Japanese than English or German, but also they naturally memorized cultural knowledge in the prototypical examples of things they generated, like generating pictures of Indian versus Western weddings. So that's a good pitch because it gives you the like some of the what, some of the how, and some of the like what you learned. And there's also a lot of different anchors in that elevator pitch that different people can like hook onto. So some people might be like, oh, you said you made an automatic benchmark generator. Like, can you tell me more about that? And then I can go about like, oh, well, dynamic benchmarks are better than static benchmarks. And we found this, and this was the thing that didn't work, blah, blah, blah. Other people might be like, oh, that bias sounds really interesting. Like, what else did you find? And then I could talk about, well, we actually found that there's a trade-off between biases, like the sexism bias, and then the like memorization of authentic cultural knowledge, blah, blah, blah. And the idea is like a really good elevator pitch should leave you with many different directions to like move out of. And that's going to make it more likely that the person you're talking to like will, have a conversation about it. Now, obviously, like this is all advanced level stuff, but you could also think about different elevator pitches that you would give to different people. So like, oh, if I know that this is a person at like a big company, like what is the thing in my work that's relevant to Gemini versus like, oh, what's the thing that's relevant to my work to like faculty? You don't need to worry about that, but that's just more things that if you think about it, can like benefit you a lot. So then what should you do while you're at the conference? So I'm going to order by my hierarchy of importance, the different things in the conference. The number one most important thing at the conference is the reception and the socials that you can get into. The socials usually fill up on the first day. So you should like go to the Google booth, go to all those booths and talk to the recruiter and ask if they have an event. Don't be afraid to ask. Once again, it doesn't matter. It's a recruiter. It doesn't really matter what they think about you. Then the poster sessions are the next most important thing. Followed by the hallway track. So the hallway track is kind of a jokey term for just people hanging out in the hallway during the conference and like having random conversations with people. I really enjoy doing that, especially actually, I'll get into this more in the next slides. Like I'll be explaining each of these things. Then talks. I actually think that, I didn't finish writing that sentence. So, talks are one way, like they're only one direction. So I really don't think attending talks is valuable at all because I'm incapable of paying attention unless it's super related to my thing. When you attend an oral session, you're usually trapped listening to like 5 talks and you only care about one. And then you either have to like awkwardly walk out or just like work on your laptop. when you're wasting time when you could be talking to people. So I pretty much never attend talks. You don't have to be as extreme as me, but I would really encourage, you should consider poster sessions in the hallway track to be more important than talks. And then like the lowest hierarchy thing is leaving the conference. So sometimes people will like, ditch a day of the conference to like go to a tourist attraction or something. I think that's really, really, really bad. Like that's a huge waste of your time. You should really be maximizing the amount of time that you're inside of the venue and talking to people, because this is a rare opportunity that you don't get. So how do you do receptions? Oh, sorry, what was that?
Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
I would like to add one more item, lunch and dinner. You should never.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm going there.
Yeah. You talk about that.
Yeah, the lunches and dinners are also very important. So I'll get to that though. I guess I sorted this by inside versus outside of the conference. So, okay, so how do you do a reception or social? So here's a picture Sharon and I took at ACL, because I think this was an example of a very successful social that I had, where we tag teamed the social. It was just the two of us. We didn't talk to any of the UCSB people there other than us. And we went around and introduced each other to the people that we knew. So we used like sort of all of these strategies that I talked about, like the spider discussion with Chris Manning, that was there. The tag teaming, the canned icebreaker was there. That's where I was using the like, oh, what's something that you're really sick of at this conference? And some people thought it was, actually William Cohen thought it was very funny when I asked him that. He was like, yeah, I'm sick of people asking me what I enjoyed at the conference. And then also Sharon and I were introducing each other to like the people that we knew. And it was really fruitful because we have overlapping but kind of disjoint sets of people we know. So I would be happy to, at NeurIPS, like I'll hang out with you guys as well and introduce you to, people who I know. And when you see like someone you know in a circle, it's great to just go, hi, and that will bring you into the circle, and they will like, that's sort of an invitation for them to introduce you to the other people there. If you don't know anyone in a circle and you want to talk to them, you can do that, but you have to be careful to read the room, because people will get really annoyed once again if you go into a circle, cut them off, and then be like, oh, so hi, Yejin Choi, I want to tell you about my work. Like that's really obnoxious. You should not do that. So you have to be careful to read the room. And one thing that I forgot to put into this slide, but is also important, that I think was successful about this, is you should keep moving at the social. So you should try to like walk around the room. Don't spend too much time talking to any specific person. Like really, you should be maximizing the amount of like exposure that you have to different people. Now, how do you do a poster session? Okay, first of all, this might be obvious, but you need to talk to the presenters. Don't just read the posters. You're not going to get interesting information really from reading the posters. You should treat reading the poster just as a way to decide who to talk to. But the goal is to talk to people, because this is the best chance to actually get to know people at the conference, because they are broadcasting the relevant information like that you can make a connection based on. Also, they're desperate to have people come talk to them. Like sometimes people are just standing there, and it's a great way to have a fruitful conversation. And if it's really slow, you can do all the things that we talked about before, where you can talk about random nonsense. You can ask them where they're from. You can ask like, oh, what year in your PhD are you? Blah, blah, blah. How do you like it? You can have all of these different things to talk about. Just have a random chit chat with this person if you think they're cool. And the other big thing that I do at poster sessions that I've gotten a lot out of is live tweeting the cool posters I see. So this ties into some of the value adds that we discussed earlier, where not only are you logging the posters that you found interesting so you can return to them later, but you're establishing your expertise and giving that curation value to other people in the community. So you're saying, okay, well, Michael is at Column and he is like giving me these interesting papers on personas and evaluation and blah, blah, blah. So, that's adding to all the benefits about building your profile that we talked about before. And then also it's doing that add to the Rolodex thing, because you can at the person who actually made the poster, and that's going to ingratiate them to you. They're going to be like, wow, thank you for promoting my work, blah, blah, blah. And you make a new friend that way. So the thing to remember, though, when you're making these posts is you should be posting your insight. You should not be posting a summary. I mean, you can post a summary. I guess the way that I do this is less that it's an insight instead of summary, but it's more that it's a specific summary of the thing I took away from it, not a total, not just like a reiteration of the abstract. So, okay, how do you do the hallway track? So I hang around the coffee and catering stands a lot. Whenever my friends are there, I will try to basically sticky them and keep them around this common area by having a conversation. Um, this is usually the best place also to talk to busier people. So like if there is like a senior faculty you want to talk to, the least intrusive way to approach them is while they're like pouring their coffee or something. Um, you can also, as you see your friends walk by, like if you're standing in a stationary circle, wave at them, call them over, introduce your friends to each other, do the scaffolding. And what should you do outside of the conference? So ditching the conference, I really try not to. It can be good if you meet someone new to like leave the conference to like go to a coffee shop or something and come back. I've had some fun doing that, but really I don't go much further than that. So I do not, do any tourism during the conference. I save that for like the extra days. Because even if you don't meet anyone new on a day, just if you are like reinforcing new connections that you have by talking to like one of your new conference friends, that's a way more like fruitful use of your time. So what should you do for meals? Meals are like an anchoring point for these connections. So this is tying into what Eric was saying. And if you have a good conversation with someone, it's a great idea to just ask them like, hey, what's your plan for lunch? Especially, if you have something in common, if you have a similar research interest or something, it's just a great way to have more of a conversation. And I think people are usually pretty happy to be invited because no one really has plans. A heuristic that I have is that I try to get lunch with people who aren't in my university, like as much as I can, even if they're already my friends. Like some of my best pals are like students at like USC or CMU. And even though like they're my friends and I'm not really, using that time to meet new people, I'm at least spending time with people I don't see every day. But it's really a waste to go all the way to like Montreal or something and then just talk to the people you already see every day. So also you should be the person to plan events. People love to do things, but they hate to plan. That's why inviting people to lunch works so well. And when you do make a plan, you need to stick to it. So you can't change the plan. You can't give up if it seems like it's not taking off. You just have to stick to it. And usually things will work out because a lot of people show up late to things. So like an example is like at every conference, my friend Tejas and I try to make a karaoke event happen. So we tried it at Colin. Deepak was there for this. Nobody showed up until like an hour and a half after the start time. And I was really like, come on, guys, no one's going to come. We should leave. But we stayed and eventually like a bunch of people showed up and it was really fun. So we didn't give up on it. And at Colin, we did like we also did this like after party after this AI2 event where we brought a bunch of different I invited my friends and said, open invite all your friends too. And we picked this bar and there was a group of like 6 of us that got there and we were just waiting for more people to come. And it was a hockey night. So the bar was just filled with some, Canadians watching the Montreal versus Toronto game, which was like a huge rivalry. And we were worried that like this bar is like completely filled with people watching the hockey game. Like, how are we going to do a social thing? But then the game ended and they cleared up and then people showed up and eventually we like filled the entire side of the bar and it was great. There were some good conversations. Once again, that was mainly a time that I was just getting my friends to meet each other. Super good use of my time. Okay, so that's the end of